and then it starts to rise up out of that glass inside that cloche. That, the way that I do it, you couldn't do it in 60 seconds. There's no fast route to it. You have to travel there. And then it's the big, and then at the end, like this has been happening the whole time. And then.
Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of the TF Cast. I'm Willis.
Hey, Grum. The date is December 13th in the solarium.
I'm your host, Jacob Bases. Today with us, we have artist, comedian, magician, and adding entrepreneur to the list, I suppose, Michael Callahan. Michael, tell us about this new venue that's opening up and what you plan to be doing out there in St. Peter.
Well, thanks for having me on with you guys again. Always a delight. Thanks for letting me talk about the new room. I've been looking for a room of my own probably since 2005, 2006. No. That's crazy talk. Much later than that. Let's call it 10 years ago. So I started producing live comedy shows in St. Peter because I was doing comedy and I just wanted to have a place closer. I wanted to have a room I could do. I wanted to have a place I could do my shows without having to be picked by whoever books a room. When you're down here and you're not able to be up in the scene all the time, fighting your way into any comedy scene can be tough even when you live in the city. And so it became one of those situations where if the doors aren't opening, just build a door and then it can be your door. And once I got that thing up and running and it caught momentum, I think the first 2 years I would hover right around 20 to 28 attendees for every show for 2 seasons. Everybody else made a little bit of money but me. I'd go home with like $10 in my pocket at the end of a couple really long days, if I was lucky. And then it rebooted in the Oddfellows Hall in downtown St. Peter, and that was a room that could sit 60. And my friend Ben Leonard and I watched it jump to mid 40s to low 50s all of a sudden, and now we're making a little bit of money, and that was exciting. Then it jumped again, where we were consistently hitting 60 to 80. Then we had to go to a new room because that room couldn't hold more than that. And we remember, I still remember us talking. Can you imagine getting that night when you get 100? And of course 100 because the math is easy.
Yeah.
You know what you sold the tickets for, and you're like, man, move that decimal twice. What? That's amazing. And we're just like, can you imagine getting to 100? And then we went from that where we would routinely, the 9 shows, it was just a once a month room. There were nights we put 137 people into the treaty site. So what was happening was, I work well with other people, but there's just so much emotional and logistical friction when you're starting to produce shows that are feeling like they can do something bigger than they're doing, but you know that not having a home for it is ultimately gonna keep your food cart from becoming Chipotle. Not that I'm gonna be Chipotle, but I'm just trying to use that as an example. You know, you're making a little bit of money doing what you love, making food, but you're like, man, I'd like to make this a little bit more permanent, a little bit more control. Yeah. And I've nearly pulled the trigger on that twice. I nearly pulled the trigger on this 6 months ago, but the circumstances weren't quite right. I didn't have the capital ready to go because I like to spend the money I make. I don't need to save the money. So I kind of had a pile. I'd had a hot streak regarding selling paintings, and I'd had some shows, and I had some capital ready to go, and then the perfect opportunity for the room opened up. It is a very small room. I just talked about 130, putting 130 in a room. I just set the room for the first time last night and leaving only like a 5x7 performing area. I can't get more than 60 in this thing. And it is going to be, that's no tables.
Yeah.
That's like, take a seat, you're holding your drink in your hand.
Intimate.
Yeah, intimate. Exactly. But it's also going to be hot crowds. When it gets going, hard walls, tight space, lots of people just a little bit inside there. If you give your audience the choice, they will sit as far away from each other as we are.
Yeah.
You can have a good show that way, but when you're sitting like you might as well be just sitting down in the mosh pit, that's what you want. You want people a little bit too close for their comfort, and every bit of emotional social energy just flows from one person right into the other. So I've got 60 seats. I pulled the trigger on a lease. I started the LLC, and now The good news is I have complete control. The scary news is I have real overhead.
Mm.
So where it used to be essentially everything was in the black, you know, there's a little bit of work to get there.
Mhm.
So, and the exciting news was the last piece to fall into place was I had to get general liability insurance. I thought that'd be easy, which is why I didn't worry about it up front. That turned out to be really difficult with the time of the year, the end of the year when all businesses are trying to reset their insurance or get insurance. And of course, I do want alcohol in the room. I'm not serving it. I don't have a liquor license. It's a hired caterer who their liquor license travels. But that caveat made it not very desirable. So I was really just waiting for anybody to throw me a quote that we could bind as a policy. And I finally got that. This weekend, this Friday and Saturday was 10 days away. And I thought, let's put together 2 shows, magic show on Friday, headliner on Saturday with a headliner I trust and the local area loves, and just see if I can get any kind of revenue flowing. Any kind. Just wanted to. I was planning on having no revenue in December, just total loss. Put those 2 shows on the book. Happy to say, close up show Friday night completely sold out, and I am 2 tickets away from selling out Saturday with Maggie Ferris, and I am in the black. Month 1, couldn't believe it. Yeah, I'm like, oh. So that's kind of. Did I say I'm in St. Peter?
Yeah, it was mentioned.
Yeah, I'm at 303 South Minnesota Avenue. It's in the downtown business district, and most people know River Rock Coffee. I am right next to River Rock Coffee. And in fact, one of the things that put the decision into the quit being a weenie and do this pile was they have a liquor license and a catering license for liquor, and there is a old communicating door between those 2 buildings. And so they have cut that into a Mr. Ed the Horse style half door, and then they're serving alcohol through that port. So the alcohol sales don't even take up square footage, which is a dream. And then now they're making money on times when they normally be closed. So good partnership there.
That's wonderful to hear. Well, it sounds like although some of this is new, it's not your first venture into the event hosting space and stuff like that. So it's cool to hear you're coming at it from some experience, especially in the area too.
It's the only thing that really let me do it because I know I know what my expenses are. I knew what they were going to be roughly, and I know that Second Story Comedy once a month for a decade, I could be guaranteed a certain number of ticket sales. And when I did the math, it's like, would you basically bring back Second Story Comedy to have your own venue, and then whatever else you do with that venue is how you then make money? It's like, I would make that trade. Like, let's finally make that trade. I'll do the once a month comedy show. That'll put me on solid footing. And then family friendly matinees on Sunday. Hey, Johnny. Who wants to see a magic trick? Hey, Cindy Lou, what's that behind your ear? So just whatever. Hopefully company Christmas parties, hopefully Halloween stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are these close magic shows like? I assume that there's a lot of I've heard a lot of praise for them, but I've yet to actually see one. So I think a lot of people might be interested to know what they're like.
A close-up magic show with me is sitting with me at a table that it looks a lot like a blackjack table. I built it. It has inlaid rope lighting, a crushed blue velveteen surface with a thin layer of padding under it for the cards and the coins for me to pick them up easily. So I've got this big semicircle table that I sit in the center of. 8 seats are right at the table, and then behind that I put between 10 and 11 seats up in bar height so that you can look down and see. And I just let people sit where they want, because there are distinctly people who absolutely want to be at the table and want to be involved. And then there's other people who want to see it, but they don't necessarily want to be intimately involved, touch, like do this, hold this, you and me, like, and so that's kind of how the seating works. And it's a style of magic that allows the performer to let our heads and our focus go down and to the table. And so instead of watching a performer up like this, you're looking down and watching the magic happen on the table, and then the magic comes up and it's in your hand. And so it's a performing style that lets you do the close-up work that usually you find in a restaurant setting where you're having dinner, and maybe if they've got a magician, the magician will come over and do like 5 to 10 minutes for you, but they're just kind of interjecting themselves into your situation. Or at another place, Close Up Workers work, is we call it strolling, where you're at a big event, and whether they're having social time or they're having dinner, you walk around and you just are constantly interjecting yourself into somebody's closed social situation. It's amazing that style is still a viable style. I've done it. I don't like it because of that exact dynamic where I'm just constantly interrupting whatever you have going on. And I know that at the most, I really only want to do like 5 minutes, because beyond that, it's too much. And so it's a way to create a more long format style with that. It lets me build effects that can take some time to get into, as opposed to just having to be so flashy, just like, oh, hey, I'm Michael, I'm a magician, here, hold this. What? Oh, it's in your pocket. Yay, see ya.
Yeah.
You know, I can be like, hey, like, in fact, almost everything in the show, like the strongest moments are moments that when it happens, when the biggest thing happens, it's taken me maybe 10 to 13 minutes to get to that moment. And I'll give you kind of an example. Like, I like to have some people shuffle the cards. We get out cards and we have you guys like draw on those cards. And then I do stuff with those cards. And then eventually all the little things that we've been doing with the cards, then those cards start to vanish and then reappear. And one of them, on the table the entire time, I have a glass cloche that's over a wine glass that there's been a deck of cards sitting inside on the table, in the middle of the table. And the last card that you drew on vanishes. And then it starts to rise up out of that glass inside that cloche. That, the way that I do it, you couldn't do it in 60 seconds. There's no fast route to it. You have to travel there. And then it's and then at the end, like, this has been happening the whole time. My favorite, I had a woman who, she was the one holding onto the glass cloche. No, she wasn't. She was next to the person. So this woman's holding onto the glass cloche, and the woman who's been enjoying the beginning of the show, her quote was, when that started to rise up, which is like maybe the 7 to 10 minute mark of the show, starts to rise up, the woman to her right goes, "Now that was a good one," which implies that the rest of it was kind of like C minus.
Unlike the rest of it, that was sick.
Yeah, right. I'm like, well, okay. First of all, most people enjoy the beginning.
Yeah,
but I'm glad that this fucking miracle finally pierced your joy bubble.
For me,
well, the other ones were tricks.
Yeah, all the other ones were tricks.
That's a fucking miracle.
For me, it's like at least per. Like, the perception of it is you're like increasing the skill level by, instead of me being David Copperfield 600 feet away from you, you're like right here and I'm easier to catch now. Yeah. And I there is a real level of, a lot of times those close-up magics are a higher skill gap too, just because like I don't know if they use this term in magic, but like APMs, actions per minute, like the physical amount of things you have to do and have to happen quickly right in front of someone. Whereas a lot of like some of those big stage tricks is she's in the table or there's a mirror, you know, it's more like physical sleight of hand or like tricks like that. And, you know, I say it's perceived as harder because like it depends on the trick. But.
Well, and people perceive it as harder because they're closer to you.
Yeah.
On the last episode, you talked a little bit about your past experience as a seance magician, doing some mentalism and stuff. And this sounds a lot more like that, where you're a little closer, you're able to like really bring people through the story with you.
And I think it's interesting you brought up actions per minute and the seance style and the story and the narrative. One of the things that I'm going through now that I'm getting older, my hands just day to day feel thicker. They don't just work as well. They throughout the day they change, as opposed to the 19-year-old hands that I started practicing with. Ideally, you start really practicing when you're real young, but I didn't. I started when I was about 19 practicing. And there's just things that I don't do as fluidly or as quickly as I used to do, and I'm having to make some decisions about cutting older material that I used to do in my 20s, because I just can't. It just doesn't feel good. Like, I can still get through the routine, but as an audience member, it just doesn't it doesn't belong in the repertoire. It just doesn't make that grade where you draw the line between here's the stuff I'm practicing, which is like all this stuff, and then like here's the stuff I should show you if you've paid me money to see
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and I think that even perceiving that line is one of the things that separates long-term amateurs from people who consistently get paid for their work. Is just the simple thing of it's not even that you're better, you're just unwilling to show them the stuff that's not good. And certainly sometimes my radar's still off on that too. But right now it's been fun in building this routine over the last 3-4 years where I am bringing in elements of the seance into the magic show. I am doing work with cards where the thing that makes the trick work now, oftentimes there are sleight of hand elements on my side, actions per minute, secret ones that I need to get done. But a lot of the things that I do to make the trick work, I am transitioning away from hard knuckle busting physical moves, and I'm relying more heavily on the psychological tricks and warfare. And again, to be very clear, not that it's not moves, it's just the difficulty of those moves. And if you put them in the same psychological blind spots, the effect on the audience side is just as strong, if not stronger.
Yeah.
It's just not as hard to do.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. In pretty much any of these entertainments, something I can relate it to is like juggling knives. Juggling knives and juggling clubs are the same trick. Another good example is tightrope walking. Tightrope walking 1 foot from the ground and tightrope walking 700 feet in the air is about the same trick, minus like maybe some wind conditions or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like this idea of like, just because a trick is really cool on the back end doesn't mean like the person on the front still just sees like the coin disappearing and reappearing, whether it went down my sleeve and out the other end with some cool contraption I built, or if I hit it behind my fingers. It's the same trick on this end.
I also think it forces you into understanding what it is you're offering to the audience.
Yeah.
So, magic, when you're young and you have the best fingers, you can easily sell yourself essentially as an X Games act. It's like you're there in the half pipe, and the reason people are watching is because you're the best.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's great, but what happens when you still want to make a living at it and you're not the best?
Yeah.
No.
Well, now you're actually talking about narrative art, and now you're talking about doing the hardest trick on a tightrope versus the documentary Man on a Wire.
Yeah, yeah.
That guy walked across the wire.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Only time in my life I've ever cared about tightrope walking.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I've seen people do crazy things on a slack line. So much, I bought a slack line.
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, don't care.
Yep.
You would never pay me. You would never pay me to watch me feebly try to make it across my slack line.
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I do it at such a low level.
Yep.
However, if there is a compelling narrative as to how I ended up on that slack line,
Yeah.
and we create dramatic stakes,
Yep.
suddenly now you might.
Yep.
You might. I'm not saying I can write a story that would make you care about walking across a slack line 10 steps, but a talented storyteller could. And so that's what it's making me shift and focus on is reminding myself that if I saw, there's this magician named Rene Levant, he's dead now, but he had one hand and he was great, amazing magician. And the reason is because the magic he did was excellent magic, but he was limited by the fact he only had one hand. And so he was no less of a magician, and you would never judge him for what he couldn't do because he only had one hand. And in the same way, I'm reframing that as in a way, aging out a little bit is kind of like, it's like my having one hand. And if I can create compelling magic that I couldn't do when I'm 20, I'm no less of a magician. And in many ways, I might be more than that. So,
Well, and in other like entertainment like categories, there's like the guys. I bring this up on the podcast a lot actually, but like the guys who can play the fastest riff as fast as possible, cooler than anyone else, don't last as long as someone who can play like 3 notes in the same amount of time and like sell them harder and sell like a narrative through. Or the same with like an artist. We talk about this actually a lot too. Like realism it has like objective qualities that can turn it into almost like a sport, almost like and shredding's the same way. It's like not even does this sound good, it's like what's your BPM and did it sound clean? And or realism, it's like, well, yeah, you can paint a perfect parrot, but like, what does that say about you other than you put 100,000 hours into drawing?
You're a wet machine.
Yeah.
Is what you really are.
Yep.
You are not pouring any humanity
Yeah, exactly.
into and the moment there's no expression, the moment it's duplication with permission is when precision is your style, you have no style.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, isn't there like something to be said about like what people want to like? Magic isn't so saturated that you couldn't do it, right? I mean, because certainly you'd probably make more money if you shackled yourself and threw yourself off of a bridge and then emerged from the freezing waters. Or, you know what I mean? Like, because people be like, oh, but
at this age, the trick would be the fact that I won't even do the joke. You can cut that. It was a shrinkage joke. Not only did he escape, but the one thing changed size. It was a transformation.
Yeah. Transformation, teleportation, escape.
Yeah.
All by one body part.
Yeah, you're right. So, but what you're bringing up reinforces, I think, what my thesis is, Jacob, which is when you're doing an escape act, what you have is stakes.
Yeah.
And the stakes is perceived danger. And in many cases, real danger. Like Houdini jumping into the water, the ice water. I mean, fundamentally, you're jumping in a bathing suit into a frozen river in London. That's dangerous.
Yeah, you can't put like foam ice cubes in it or something.
David Blaine.
Yeah.
you should just tell the audience about your overhead like right away. Like,
just that's really great.
I used to do this for $10 a month.
Yeah, I know. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
That's the perceived stakes. It's like, I will lose my business if I don't land this.
Yeah. No, that's really funny.
Frowning children photos.
Did the trick work? Yeah. Did he make his monthly payment? No. Terrifying.
You said you had when I had talked to you about this outside of this, you said one of the reasons you were excited about it is that there's not a lot of places to perform specifically magic. I was just wondering if you could talk about that a little more, because that was interesting to me, because I literally can't name one magic venue, and I'm someone who's like pretty interested. I'm not like a practicing magician, but I really love magic.
The only one place that I know in all of Minnesota where you can just go to see magic guaranteed is the Turf Club, which is a high-end restaurant, I think, in like the Minnetonka area. I don't even know.
I've been to the Turf Club. It's
is it in Minnetonka?
I can't remember what city, but it's a Live Nation venue, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Like part of the First Ave family of venues.
Mm-hmm.
And the magician you would see there is Suzanne, who is a excellent professional magician. She's one of our state's true magic stars. She was a student of the legendary, and arguably she was his favorite student. I'm going to botch his name, Al Schneider, who was a very famous sleight of hand magician from Minnesota. He invented the 4 coins under the cards matrix.
Yeah, cool.
The original version of Matrix.
Cool.
That's Al Schneider.
I didn't know that was a Minnesota trick. That's cool.
That is a Minnesota trick. And she was he taught, but he taught seriously. Like, you weren't like, oh, I'm paying for Allison's magic lessons, right?
Yeah,
yeah. You came to him as somebody who already had worked on it and you wanted to get good.
Yeah.
And she was his star pupil, and she was one of the first season Fool Us Foolers. She's a legend. I admire her work greatly. But outside of that, my friends, the Magic Underground up in the cities, they still do pop-up stuff here and there at Sisyphus Brewing and Modest Brewing, but they don't have a home.
Okay.
There used to be a magic shop in the Mall of America. There is still a magic shop, Eagle Magic, which is the country's oldest long-running magic shop, run by Larry Kalo, who's another magic legend. But again, you can go to see a magic lecture there. You can see Larry demonstrate stuff over the counter, but you're not going to see a magic show.
I haven't been in there. I'm surprised. I've only been to Air Traffic.
Okay, I don't even know where Air Traffic is.
Oh, that's in Mall of America too.
Is it a magic shop?
It's a little bit of
game
magic,
store?
but it's like magic, juggling, like pretty much any play, like anything people call playing. So like
Oh.
juggling, poi, slack lines, and then they also have like puzzles and games. But
93 points, 937.8 in your Dewey Decimal, games and hobbies.
yes,
So yeah, that's insane to me.
yeah,
And one of the reasons that, when I made this decision to take this risk, my stakes, my overhead, I knew that comedy, and people still remember. I know when I met you guys, I wasn't doing it, but people still remember me as like the comedy guy. down here.
yeah,
And so I knew that there was going to be that baseline of revenue with that comedy show. And then I also just kept thinking to myself, once that's established, if there was a place where you knew you could go see magic and it was a brick and mortar place that didn't move around, like, oh, the bar tonight has hired a magician,
yeah.
like there's a magic place.
Yeah.
I think at some point there's going to be a tipping point there, and it should just start to get a life of its own.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And I'm going to be working really hard right out of the very beginning of bringing in magicians who are in my network to make sure that not just am I there, but people who are better than I am are sticking their heads through it. So I'll go ahead and promote it right now. I have been on the phone all day today, back and forthing with Magic has one Wunderkind right now in his mid-20s. His name is Nick DeFott, and he is from St. Paul, and he is kind, funny, like the funny you can't teach, like the real funny,
Yeah,
incredibly skilled magician.
Hmm.
Started taking serious lessons from the best magic teacher in the area, arguably the country. Tyler Erickson was his mentor and teacher. So this kid, he has it all. And the coolest thing about him, even though, and so what he to give you an example of where he's at, Matt King, who is the country's probably most famous comedy magician on a national scale, he's the afternoon show at Harrah's in Vegas. When Mac takes time off, Nick does the show.
cool.
It's Nick at Harrah's. And so this kid, to his credit, he's just, again, he's so down to earth. He has kept track of all of us local guys, his original Magic Club. He's still friends with everybody. There's a Facebook group where we all jump in, and he's going to be coming next month, January, the 18th and 19th, the Friday and Saturday. I think that's right. Let's double check it. But Nick freaking DeFott is going to do the weekend. And
Wait, this coming week, next
no,
week?
January. So
cool.
this was like the
definitely
soft
coming then.
opening, but the grand opening weekend, I was like, okay, soft opening. Let's get a couple shows in December, get the place up and rolling, and then who's gonna open it? And Nick's like, I'll do it. Like, I'd be happy to do it. So
Heck yeah, I'll be there.
yeah, and he know,
That's awesome.
and the thing is about Nick knows Derek Hughes. Nick knows everybody.
Yeah.
And so if it can be another place where you treat them right, you treat your customers right, you create a place where kids can come see a family friendly magic show on a Sunday. I mean, you can't tell me that it won't dominate for a while because it's the only place you can get it.
Yeah.
How big is the actual like performers market in like the United States, for example? Like how many people are producing this kind of magic at like even this scale?
It's so small. The only other, so the Magic Lounge in Chicago got started, I think 6 or 7 years ago, and it has been a smash success. It is a permanent magic venue. In fact, Nick oftentimes will do as much as like a month there. He'll be their artist in residence in Chicago. Those people have done incredibly well. Depending on who you talk to, people will say the Magic Castle in Los Angeles is actually past its prime, even though it's still there and running. There was the Tower Magic Bar in Aspen, run by Doc Eason and Eric Mead, and those guys aren't there anymore.
It was like a couple hundred people, maybe.
Maybe, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, it's not many.
Yeah. Do you think that has to do with I guess I want to reform that question. What can like a magician aspire to do really? It sounds like it's like Vegas or big city residency, getting on Fool Us or America's Got Talent seems like the big like entertainment on TV avenues. But yeah, what are like some aspirations?
So as a working magician, yeah. And I think one of the reasons you don't see a lot of venues is because venues have a lot of risk.
Yeah.
There is the overhead. You are charged with, there's a saying in show business, which is it's easier to find a new audience than a new show.
Yeah.
And that's really true. I mean, to generate a new high quality performance piece, it just takes time. I mean, it can take years. It's like creating a new album.
It could take decades.
It can take decades.
Easy.
And then even then the new stuff might not be as good as the old stuff. And
Yeah.
once you've seen somebody do their trick, you know what's coming and you can enjoy it knowing what's coming. That certainly is, but it takes the kind of person who also likes to buy DVDs. You know, it's like, that was a great movie. I want to watch that again. You know, a lot of people are like, see it done, don't care. You can work, I think most magicians work as what we call corporate magicians, where we are the entertainers after a company dinner. You get paid. A lot of magicians make their living doing strolling magic, which is being in a company or a country club or some sort of a social setting, and it is your job. The same way, I mean, this is going to be a very demeaning statement, but in the same way that somebody might have to choose between having a magician at the party or a small Shetland pony standing off to the side in a stable. Like, that's kind of what you are.
Yeah.
You're like, well, we got the thing up. What should we get? Well, we should get a pony. We should get a balloon guy. We should get a magician.
A DJ.
We should get a DJ. There should be catering. I mean, you're in that list.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how most magicians make their living. And it's one of those sneaky professions where if you can build a really solid 20-minute repertoire of material that can be performed close up, not even to a room, but just a few people at a time, you can make an astonishingly good living.
Yeah.
It is one of the art forms where there is most art forms, it's that tiny little group at the top that take all of the actual money.
Yeah.
And then there's this huge triangle base underneath and everybody's just, it's a side gig. And magic is one of the arts where, and maybe that's why they don't let us be in the arts. They won't give us grants. Now that I think about it and I say this all out loud, magic's not considered an art legally in the Library of Congress, which is why we are not allowed to get grant funding, all those things. You can't do it if you're doing magic. Copperfield has fought that fight in the courts for years, and he's got endless money, and he can't win that fight. So
he should just apply as a carpenter.
He should, exactly. So yeah, it's one of those sneaky professions where I had a good... I talked myself into my first restaurant gig where I would work 6 to 9 going table to table at a nice restaurant on Friday and Saturday nights in Longmont, Colorado. And within the first month, so the first 4 weekends, so the first 8 nights times 3. So within the first 24 working hours, I had established what my best 5 minutes were. It was 3 tricks. It was my quick opening, find a card. Like you would take a card. I'd let you say, hey, I'm not forcing you. And if you don't like it, get a better card. Okay. It'd go in, cut it, boom, pop. It would flip up in the air and I'd catch it. Hey. And then you take another one and say, now you might have thought the last one, the way I did that was I might have stuck my pinky where your card was. That's called a break. People do that. Not me. That's not how I do this. So watch, I'll put it in like da-da-da. Now I'm going to have you find it. I'm not even going to find it. You're going to find it. Okay. What was your card? 3 of hearts. Okay. Spell that. THREEOFHERTS. Turn over the next card. What? 3 of hearts? I know, it's crazy. Okay, now, shuffle it. Take the deck. Now, here's what I want you to do. If you think a card's red, put it here. If you think a card's black, put it here. Just guess. I swear to God, you're going to get it right. What? No way. Red, black, red, turn them over. Holy crap. How did I do that? Thanks. Okay, I'll go. Do you want to know how? I'll write it down for you. I'll go in the other room and write it down. Okay, go do that. And then I go grab my business card and I write it down and I bring it in, which also gave them time to get their tip out if they wanted. So I leave them some space. Come back. Oh, $5. Oh, thank you so much. And here's the name of that book. You can learn it. 5 minutes. I rode that 5 minutes. I mean, that's how I became a professional magician.
Was
5 minutes.
Was it
3
a Swedish
tricks.
shuffle?
A Swedish shuffle? No. Is that the one that the Muppet Chef does?
No,
He's like,
sorry, the bottom force where you like pull from the top.
Oh, okay. So that's, you know what that is? That's new language for an old trick. I got corrected. I referred to a trick the other day to a magician friend. I was like the name of the trick, and he's like, we don't call it that anymore. So I won't even say what I know that trick as. And because I don't want to. I respect political correctness. I don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Yes, that might be why. Yeah, that's what I learned
it
it as in a book.
Nope, you're not called that.
Oh, that's so interesting.
No, the way so I did not force a card. I had 2 selected ones, and if you want to talk shop, my go-to. So it changed over time, and the way that I found the card at the end was pretty hardcore. I'm going to be honest, yeah. But my really early go-to was what was known as a short card, where if you take a deck and you take one of the cards and you cut like just a 1/16 of an inch off the end of it, if you riffle the end of the cards, it'll pop right at that card. Thunk, and then you can either keep going if that's what you want. So what I would do is I would just put that card on the bottom, which I could find it instantly because it would pop. And so you take any card you want, I'd offer you the bottom half of the deck. I just put them on top. And then in that first shuffle, it'll catch there, bring that card to the top, another false shuffle, false cut, flip it off the top with the thumb, Audley Walsh's Side Spinner out of Tarbell, Volume 3.
That's actually the plot in the season finale of the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that exact trick.
Are you serious?
It really is, yeah. Like the whole plot is he cut the rim of the card so he could shuffle to
It's amazing.
I love it. Yeah, and then that other trick is super cool because it's like an ancient trick. It's like not ancient, but it's like a.
It's known as it's still considered the best card trick. I remember
it's so cool.
Yeah, when we rolled over from 1999 to 2000, if you weren't freaking out about all the computers shutting down, you might have remembered a list. They did a compilation of the 10 best magic tricks of the last 100 years.
Cool.
And the only card trick on that list was Paul Curry's Out of This World. He was an amateur magician, which makes it even cooler. And and that thing was so good that it's been improved 60 times. I still perform the way he wrote it up.
Yeah.
And you'll never convince me that the original version is not the best version.
I feel like while doing it, like while you're actively proving to yourself it works, even then you're like, whoa, that worked.
Yeah.
And you're like, I know how it works and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm still like, whoa.
I love that trick. I love that trick because it's the one that taught me the extent to which you can control the behavior of your audience members through our social norms. So there's a moment in that trick where if they were to reach and touch and look, the whole thing is exposed. And the way you sell that trick is to get through the moment where everything is done and you have to convince the audience through your social behavior that everything's done, there's no fear, it's safe, and now we're just going to reveal this thing in the coolest, most dramatic way possible. And because your instinct is to like let's say my mic stand is you and you just did, and we're side by side. Your instinct when you start performing the trick is to be like, don't you dare touch any of this. Because if you touch the thing, you're going to see, and then I don't make my overhead. And then it was awesome to learn in those first few months that the way you actually do that is you actually lean away. And you let them know, like, you did it. You did it. And now they have you're not guarding anything. So they're not chasing anything. And then you just real casually. And when you communicate that to them in their mind, I mean, you can learn how it's done by going and looking it up. I've never seen anybody figure it out.
Earlier you used the term warfare when you're talking about like the way that a magician approaches a performance problem or something. Is that kind of accurate with how you'd think about approaching a performance? Is you're kind of in some version of warfare with the audience, trying to make sure that your reality is the one that is being perceived?
It's not only is it a fair comparison, there's been books written about it. there's a gentleman, and I don't know his name, but he took the art of war and adapted it to street performing, street
Oh, that's
magic.
awesome.
Everything from putting the army's backs against the wall, like just every concept
Mm-hmm.
in the art of war. How does that apply to you as a street performer? And he could have done it as a performer as well. Your terms, your grounds. I mean, there's so many, and which when you want to talk about wanting to create consistent performances, understanding the terrain you're on is absolutely vital. And there are terrains that are better, and even that the terrain will dictate the way you fight. So like if you're doing strolling close up or street magic, you're using guerrilla tactics.
Yep.
You are using small unit tactics, jump in, jump out. And then if you're going to conduct the big battle, you want to pick, that's called a theater. You're on stage. The lights are on you. There's a proscenium arch. You control the sound. Like you control all of the major elements that give you the chance to win the battle of did you like this or did you not? You know, I'm not a big war guy, but it is it is an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, you don't want to leave the room dead, but you want it's a combative activity maybe, or like the way that it can be approached is it's helpful to think about it as something that's a little in conflict.
Well, and I think the ideas of never, God, there's so many different ways to do it. I mean, and there's different ways to win fights, right? Like, there are the performers that just come at you full frontal assault and bowl you over, like the Juggernaut, right?
Yep.
Like if you're playing, like I'm a big Diablo 2, Diablo 3 guy, and if you're gonna play the Barbarian, everything's melee, everything's coming at you, like you are just gonna come at somebody full force like a ton of bricks. I would say that's Pendulette style.
Yeah.
And then within that very same show, if you watch Teller's going to be the one where everything you give him, you've given him willingly. He has drawn you in. He's more of a, you think you're coming at him, and as he backs in and where he wants, you suddenly realize you're exactly where he wanted you to stand, which is over the trap. And, he wins that way. So I think that, in the same, again, terrain matters, circumstances matter, context matters, understanding who you are. I'm not the kind of, I spent a lot of years on stage as a comic, which was one of the good things about spending a lot of time on comic, trying to figure out, was I a high energy guy, bowl you over guy, or a quieter deadpan guy? And I really wanted to be quiet deadpan guy. I admire that style so much. And then plus also, like even day to day, I kind of sit in quiet deadpan guy. But when I get into a social setting, I naturally start to ramp up energy wise. I will oftentimes dominate a conversation to a point of like a fault. Like you're so talking over everybody right now.
We're familiar.
But I have so many important things to say, and so naturally for me as a comic, at least, just getting ramped up was my best tactic. Although all my favorite performances are the ones where I'm a little bit more under control, deliver the stuff, let it breathe.
I think the easiest comparison, if you're sticking with the whole combat thing, is it really actually doesn't matter what you do, because most folks would look at if you were to just take images of war and show them to people, they would dislike that. People don't want to watch that. But it all depends on how it's received. So like you could give a good trick or a bad trick, but if the audience is favorable to you, like that's what you're really controlling.
Absolutely, likability. That's right, and fundamentally, when we were talking about movements per minute and being a badass, you will go much farther in the field as a professional if you understand what about. And that doesn't necessarily not mean being like sweet and kind, but whatever it is you're putting out, if you can get them to like that.
Is there a guy like that out there? Or is there a magician out there who's just like a total heel? Like a guy, he's like, I want you to hate me and think that I'm wrong.
Amazing Jonathan was like that. Yeah, look him up. That's as close as anybody I can think of who is super aggressive. And then the other one that you have to be lucky to see him because he doesn't do anything essentially other than street magic. There is the greatest street magician of our generation is a guy named Gazzo. He was one of these guys who was a student of a legendary sleight of hand magician. I saw him in Boulder one summer when we were still living there. And the way first of all, nobody built bigger crowds than he did. And nobody in Boulder knew that they were looking at a legitimate international street performing god.
Yeah, like a master.
A master's master. It's like, hey, did you know that Picasso's drawing on napkins down at number 4? Like that kind of level of amazing. And this guy would start his show. He's got this bald, round head, stocky. As always, like they dress kind of in a costume, like you can tell it walks the line between street clothes but also a little bit performery, but also not too clean, a little bit dirty around the edges intentionally. And he would just hurl insults at everybody who would walk by with no kindness in his voice.
Love it.
No sparkle in his eye.
Beautiful.
And it was the most hateful stuff you'd ever heard.
Oh gosh.
And the people would just, they would hear it and they would look at the person he just said it about and they'd look at him. Is this safe? Is this legal?
Yeah. What a great way to gain control and immediately put your mark completely off kilter.
Yeah.
Like they have no idea there are even a mark. Probably even mid magic trick. They're like, what's, huh?
Well, what was the punchline? What was he getting to? Like, was he was stopping people to?
He had his performance table out. So visually you walk by him and you knew, especially in the setting, Boulder, Colorado, but even if you weren't in Boulder, you'd know he's a performer because he had his table all set up. He had his bag and he was dressed like a performer, but not over the top. And so you just weren't sure if like maybe this was a street performer you're watching a man who's been scraping by for the last 24 months. He's got 25 cents in his pocket. He's 3 days from his last bender and he needs a drink and he's just had it with the world and he's going to just pour every ounce of vitriol into anybody who passes by.
It's like a redemption arc he's going for.
Kind of, but also, like Grum said, it's also about control. And also the thing was, most of it, if not all of it, except if it hit you too close to home, was hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, funny. And all of these lines were, I know that he's just watching people go by, but people fall into buckets. And this guy's been doing it for 25 years. And it doesn't matter what you walk in, he knows exactly the one for you.
Yeah.
It's a proven winner and you're going to get it. And then he finished and he would do a bunch of really hard card stuff. And then he would finish with a cups and balls routine. He had a bowler hat on and his, he worked the biggest set of cups and balls I've ever seen. So not only did his cups produce, boy, they were big. I don't know if he produced full size oranges, but close, like big cups. And then he worked out of a pouch, like a pouch on his stomach is where his bag was. So he's in and out of things. And then at the very end, he puts his hat on the table and he's going. And then under the hat is a melon, which is. That gets the money. Gets the money. Nobody saw the cantaloupe coming. Completely surrounded, middle of the street. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Gazzo and Amazing Jonathan. Those are the two just like dagger throwers. And Jonathan's dead and Gazzo, I don't know if he can still do that anymore.
Yeah. And I would say some eras of Penn are kind of like that, but it was more being abrasive to like the magic scene
and to Teller.
And to Teller. Yep. Or like, yeah. Did he staple things to Teller, or am I thinking of the Amazing Jonathan?
I think that's Jonathan.
Okay.
The most overt act of violence acted out on stage, Penn onto Teller, would be out of their early stuff, which is still one of my favorite bits, where Teller is trying to do the blindfolded card find with a knife.
Yep.
And Penn has just been riding him. He follows him into the audience as Teller's trying to have a card select, and he's just like, they just saw the pass. This is the worst pass I've ever seen anybody do. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry he's not on his game tonight. Just like riding him. And Teller's finally blindfolded, and he's like trying to find the card with the knife, and Penn's like, moves the cards one more time.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, this is actually Teller on Penn violence. I flipped it. And then Teller stabs and then Penn screams and it comes up and the knife is gone and the blood. And then Penn says, that's what Teller and I do. We take something, a classic in magic, and we class it up a little bit.
Yeah, we class. You know what I think I was getting confused by was Penn's nail gun trick.
Yeah, that's on himself.
Yep. I think that was confusing me. So we could probably go on this tangent forever. We're on an hour here. I think we've failed to bring up the art side of your gallery and you as an artist.
Okay, real quick, tickets are always available for the shows at mjcallahan.com.
Cool.
Just like the art. There's a little, you click shop, you click tickets, there it is. But
Awesome.
So during the day, so part of all this is I was fortunate enough to have my first solo show at the Art Center of St. Peter as a painter, abstract acrylics, and then traditional water landscapes, watercolor, and then occasionally a watercolor abstract. And people continue to encourage the work by purchasing the paintings, which was something that continues to astound me. It is something that continues to astound me. And so one of the exciting things about getting the space is knowing that the shows would do the bulk of the heavy lifting as far as the mechanics of a business, but then it creates an opportunity for that space to flex into my art gallery during the day. And I'm right next to River Rock, which is the most, per capita, the most walked into business in St. Peter by far. And when that one opened up, because I was looking at a building across the street down the block, like literally diagonally all the way down.
I see.
And nobody makes it past the contour shop. Nobody makes it past Cooks and Company when they're shopping down there. So, although now you should go to Generations Boutique. My friend Leela has she's reworked the whole thing. But yeah, so to be right next to them, and during the art stroll of St. Peter, I was up in my studio up above the Art Center, and a young woman from St. Paul was driving back from Sioux Falls because that's where her parents are still living. And she saw the signs and she decided to get coffee. And while she's like, oh, I'll wander upstairs. And she wandered in my studio and took the only really big expensive piece, saw her take a picture of it, started texting. She's like, I'll be back on Wednesday to get this if that works. And so that kind of stuff continues to happen with the pieces. And so I felt like if I had a gallery where somebody could serendipitously walk in, and also people who like to keep track of the stuff online wanted to just come in and see what's new, and I'll be painting in there. So during the day, like pretty good chance I'll actually just be painting in the space, working on pieces. Yeah, I don't know if I don't think the gallery could ever do it on its own, but as a barnacle on the whale that is the stand-up comedy show, I think that it might find some sort of a life.
I think it's really cool that you found a way to kind of like take everything that you're passionate about and put it in one space, and also like kind of create a space that, I mean, we don't have a comedy club. We have the Circle Inn, which does great, and Dan's been selling out. I think he sold out 4 out of 6 shows this year.
Love it.
So, but yeah, I just think it's really awesome that you're doing this. And also, by Michael's art, I have a Callahan hanging at the head of my bed.
Oh,
I love it.
I love that. Thank you. And I want to let everybody know that part of my mission going clear back to doing the comedy shows is to give another place for our local scene to find quality stage time. So when anybody, any of you guys wants to get some stage time in front of a sold out room on a weekend that I've got something going, reach out to me, because that's what it's for too. You guys have been very generous with your stage and me, and I want to extend the offer. In fact, I'm stealing Bacula this weekend.
That's what I was guessing who the local favorite was.
Yeah, so Bacula's going to do some time for me, and I'm going to do some time for me, and then I'm going to do a little bit more time for me.
Ooh, how generous of you.
Then Maggie Ferris is going to make sure it was worth the money.
Yeah, I would be there, but I'll be out of town. But,
no worries.
It sounds awesome. Yeah, go check Michael out. We can probably get some links somewhere to go check him out.
mjcallahan.com. Find me on Facebook, whatever.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. You guys are the best.
Bye-bye.